U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is sitting down for a high-stakes interview tonight with CNN. It's her first unscripted media appearance since becoming the Democratic nominee for president. Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, will also join her. The interview has already been recorded, and CNN released a preview clip earlier today.
We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the passage, illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
Journalist Steve Fetterman joins me once again live from Los Angeles. Steve, let's sort of walk our viewers through now as we inch now. We're about less than an hour away from that interviewing being aired on CNN. But talk to us again about the importance of this interview specifically for Harris. We know Tim Walz is with her, but really all eyes on Kamala Harris tonight.
Oh, absolutely. For political observers, this is must-see TV tonight, Angie. She's going to be asked a number of questions, we believe, on a number of subjects. She'll be forced to give specific answers. The reason this has become such an important interview is the fact that she hasn't given one since she became the presumptive Democratic nominee when Joe Biden dropped out. Now, Republicans have been harping for 3-4 weeks. Why hasn't she done an interview? And that has made this sort of a talking point for the last couple of weeks. So I think that's made it into an issue that it might not otherwise be. Now, the key thing for any candidate in any interview like this is to avoid doing something wrong. Now, Kamala Harris 3 years ago did have a bit of an issue trying to answer a question from Lester Holt of NBC about why she had never actually been to the U.S.-Mexican border. Let's listen.
Let me just quickly put a button. Okay. Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, you know, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
So that sort of became a meme, if you will, of her interview 3 years ago. She wants to avoid something like that tonight. She will talk about inflation. She'll talk about the U.S. economy. She will talk more about the border, we assume, and the situation in Gaza. So there'll be a number of issues that she can talk about. And one of the things that she will carefully try to do, we think, is to try to maybe very slightly separate herself from some of the Biden administration's policies and talk about what she would do if she became president. So the key thing tonight, don't make a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed, as they're going to be hanging on her every word, let alone the look, the positioning, everything. All of that will come into play on this. In the meantime, we know for the Donald Trump camp and his campaign, the incident at Arlington at National Cemetery, still a very poignant sticking point for him.
Yes, well, this occurred on Monday. He went and he was invited by some of the families of the 13 soldiers who were killed when the U.S. completely withdrew from Afghanistan. So he went to Arlington National Cemetery at their invitation. The problem is, with him was an entourage, which included a photographer, a videographer. And Arlington officials told the Trump people that you cannot do anything political or partisan while you are here. That was made clear to the Trump entourage. Yet when they got to this one section, Section 60, which is a very sacred section where people who have been killed in Afghanistan, in Iraq are buried, and you cannot take any pictures there, the Trump people did take pictures. There was some altercation with an Arlington official where someone was pushed aside. And last night, Trump posted on his TikTok social media site this video. Take a look.
We didn't lose one person in 18 months. And then they took over that disaster, the leaving of Afghanistan.
So was that political? Was that partisan? You decide for yourself. Trump is suggesting today that it was not. Take a listen to what he said.
So I go there. They ask me to have a picture, and they say I was campaigning. I don't need... The one thing I get is plenty of publicity. I don't need that. I don't need the publicity.
So will this become a campaign issue for the next 68 days? We don't know. The Harris campaign I would think would like to make this an issue, talking about Donald Trump not obeying rules at Arlington National Cemetery, a very sacred site. We'll see. Sometimes these things become issues for the entire campaign. Sometimes they go away. But again, right now we're anxiously awaiting for that interview with Kamala Harris to see what she says. We are sure to get some reaction, I am sure, from Donald Trump after that interview takes place.
Indeed, and then it'll be another busy day unpacking it all, Steve. Thank you so much for this. Journalist Steve Futterman for us in Los Angeles. All right, let's talk more about that major sit-down interview for Kamala Harris. Our next guest has insights into how this interview could affect her political fortunes, and she's using artificial intelligence to do it. Erin Kelley is the CEO of Advanced Symbolics and the creator of AI research assistants Ask Polly. Polly is known for correctly predicting Canadian federal elections and the 2016 Brexit vote. And Erin joins me now from Ottawa. Erin, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you, Angie.
I can only imagine Polly must be buzzing in terms of what it is that she's tracking here. But walk us through kind of how it works a little bit. We know that she casts a pretty wide net in, scraping through public data from social media networks to sort of predict information, to grab information. Talk to us about now this U.S. election and what she's tracking.
Yeah, absolutely. So Polly tracks multiple social media platforms, TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, many platforms. And what she's doing is creating a representative sample of the population. So she's matching the people that she listens to the census data to make sure that she has representation from all demographics across the country, and she has independence between the people so that we're outside of social bubbles. So we've got about 2 million people that we're tracking and looking to see what they say, how they react to every news item, and she's processing all of that to put together the horse race numbers.
It's pretty fascinating. And so those numbers, I guess, what are they showing in terms of which horse is zoning on which issue?
Well, there's different ones on every issue. Yeah. Overall, Kamala Harris has pulled ahead. So she's about 10 points ahead of Donald Trump in the popular vote right now. Polly is also able to track all of the issues. So it's crime, taxes, abortion, and where each candidate does well, where they don't do as well. And any other kind of question you want to ask, you just ask Polly and she goes out and she finds it.
That's pretty cool. What have you noticed in the information that you've been able to gather so far in terms of her analysis? And you mentioned there where, sort of between Kamala Harris and the Trump campaign, where things are at. But what are some of the key issues per candidate, if you will, that Polly, tracks that's a positive, that's a negative, as we're now, I guess, 9.5 or 9 or so weeks away from this campaign or this election?
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is Kamala Harris's strategy of staying out of the media really seems to be helping her, because a lot of the conversation about the election is very negative. I mean, very, very negative. And the negativity, Trump is wrapped up in it because he's getting quoted and people are sharing his stuff. Because she has not been doing as many interviews, she's not getting wrapped up in that negativity. So it's extending her honeymoon period, if you will. So it's actually working. If it's a strategy that she's consciously putting forward, it's working for her. For Trump, it's really interesting. When his legal problems were not in play when Biden was the candidate. But now with Kamala Harris coming in, just the fact that she's a prosecutor and she's very strategically said many things contrasting her as a upholder of the law, compared it to him who breaks the law, that's really been effective. It has brought that conversation about his legal problems to the very top of the issues for swing and centrist voters. I mean, people who are Republican, not so much, but for swing and centrist voters, and also his age, which is interesting because, as you probably know, nothing ever dies on the internet, right? So now people are going back and rewatching Trump interviews and pointing out times where he has made mistakes and been forgetful. Wow. And bringing that up and questioning whether he is now too old to be the president.
That's interesting. But I mean, as you point out, clearly looking at things much more detailed than, what you and I were doing would be able to do, let alone have pollsters go from door to door, which they used to do back in the day. You mentioned Kamala Harris and sort of not jumping in on all the media interviews. We know that she has an interview that's going to be airing on CNN in less than an hour's time, about 50 minutes time or so. do you think now there could be any level of pivot after this interview? I know the information hasn't come out yet, but, you know, sort of where she is in terms of the states, she's in, you know, in the state of Georgia, where they've been campaigning, and now, of course, she's put herself in the media spotlight. Could there be a shift based on maybe what you've seen tracked so far?
There could be. I mean, this could be the end of the honeymoon period for Kamala Harris, depending on how she performs tonight. It'll also give Trump a little bit of insight into any weakness ahead of the debate that they're going to have, because so far he hasn't had much material to work with, right? So this is going to be really, really important. We're looking forward to tracking that and seeing how this changes things. To the extent that she can tie his legal problems and issues of trust and criminality, if you will, because those are the words that people are using online, to key issues, for example, taxes.
Right.
There's a lot of talk online, especially among pivot or swing voters, saying that his tax policies favor the rich, that the middle class policies expire. And because of his history with the courts, they feel that this is an indication that he is not honest. And so the extent to which he can put those things together and stay away from things that are a little bit difficult for her, immigration in particular, as we heard in the clip, you know, that needs to be the strategy.
It's pretty fascinating. We'll be following it with you indeed, Erin. Thank you so much for this. Erin Kelley is the CEO of Advanced Symbolics and the creator of AI research assistant Ask Polly, joining us from Ottawa. Great to speak with you, Erin.
Great. Thanks, Angie.
Take care.